China's pushback to Blinken and Sullivan yesterday. You've got Black Lives Matter. Don't bother us about the Uyghurs.
I think that was to be expected, Hugh. I think that's classic. They're always deflecting that way. But the fact of the matter is, there is punishable genocide going on right now in Xinjiang. I think this is one of the most unified bipartisan issues. And, if the United States doesn't speak up about this and do something about this, then nobody will.
Ellie, you write with the undersecretary that individuals can actually do something about this by contacting pension funds, investment funds. Explain what the individual responsibility is confronted with genocide.
First of all, good morning, Hugh. And I think the first thing that the American people need to understand is that, in fact, there is a genocide taking place today in China of the Uyghur Muslims. And when we speak about genocide, the State Department in January came to this conclusion after a full investigation. So what are we talking about here? Well, we've seen photos come out of China where you see rows and rows of Uyghur Muslims with shaved heads, and they're shackled and they're waiting to be jammed onto trains and transported to over 380 concentration camps across China. We've heard audio recordings of party apparatchiks calling the Uyghurs malignant tumors, and their religion is a communicable plague. Now, Hugh, these are the same kinds of tactics that we saw the Nazis commit in Nazi Germany, where first they tried to dehumanize the Jews, and then they committed genocide against the Jews. And so the question I think that the world needs to understand is, for 76 years following the Holocaust, we said never again. And if we mean never again, we have to take action. There is a genocide taking place right now today, and none of us can go to sleep at night with a moral conscience until we do take action against what's taking place in China.
So, Keith Krach, why do you think American media is reluctant or simply indifferent to a genocide? It's a word with important meaning, precise meaning. The State Department went through a long process to establish it. And by the way, Secretary Blinken agreed with that definition during his confirmation hearings. There's no partisan disagreement here. It's a genocide. Why is that not getting traction in the American media?
I think it gets down to one of the things Speaker Pelosi said, and that is, if America doesn't speak out against, the human rights violations and genocide in China because of some commercial interest, then we'll lose all moral authority. And commercial interest, Hugh, it means a conflict of interest. So the media is in the same issue with regard to the biggest asset managers like BlackRock, the World Economic Forum, the ESG community, which is environmental, social, and governance standards. None of these guys have spoken out. They're conflicted. If you look at what we've done, we have not only turned the other way, but we have funded China Inc. through our pension funds, university endowments, foundations, mutual funds, all of that. And what we really need to do as American citizens is speak out about it and actually hurt them where it counts, and that is in the wallet. And if it's not us, then I don't know who's going to do that. And
Secretary Krach, I just asked Liz Cheney at the top of this hour about Representative Michael Waltz's resolution. I always acknowledge my son works for Waltz, and I always put that out there. But Michael Waltz introduced a resolution. It's got a lot of support. Liz Cheney supported it, to boycott the Olympics. And of course it will hurt our athletes, but don't go NBC, don't sponsor MasterCard, don't, whatever it is, don't do it. Is that going to work?
Well, by the way, that is a great example, because all these institutions support, a noble cause and a high moral compass, and the Olympics as much as anybody else. So to have the Olympics in 2022 in China is hypocritical the way I look at it. Now, whether that'll happen, I don't know, because they get so much money from China, as does all these other organizations. They're conflicted, and that is why it comes down to the citizens of the world and speaking up. not just verbally, but also with your wallet. And that's one of the things that we said in this op-ed was to contact your pension fund or your wealth manager, and if they're invested in funds in China, uh, you know, ask them about that and ask them why, because it's all big one China Inc.
Yeah, Ellie, you know as well as anyone, the American record vis-a-vis the Holocaust was mixed because early reports were discarded. The State Department at that time in the 40s had some very inherent anti-Semitism in it. Do you believe that that record will prompt us to act more quickly here? And a second part to the question, do you expect Israel to boycott the China Games in 2022? Because of all the states in the world, Israel and the United States ought to be leading that effort.
You're exactly spot on about the history, and I think that's why the moral imperative right now is that much clearer. Meaning that after the Holocaust, a lot of Jews asked themselves, well, how could the world allow that to happen? How did they allow 6 million Jews to get murdered by the Nazis? And the answer was always, well, the world didn't know, right? Today, we know exactly what the Chinese Communist Party is committing against the Uyghur Muslims. We know, we've seen the evidence. Again, the State Department has done a conclusory investigation. And so there's no more excuses, right? No one can play ignorance right now. We know exactly what's going on there. And so to your second point about, should the Israelis boycott the Olympics, I would certainly advocate for that. I think the United States and the Israelis must do that. And that would really make a strong impact for everyone to see that what does it mean to actually take action when an entire people are being murdered in front of our eyes, when an entire people are being eliminated. We really cannot stand by silently. And I want to just echo the Undersecretary's statement earlier. I don't know that Americans understand that your average American, all of us, so whether it's our retirement funds, our pension funds, the university endowments, everybody somehow is likely invested in China. And so what we laid out in this opinion piece is the opportunity for every American to do something, to take action today.
Now, you also mentioned a fact, Ellie, which I had not heard before, 380 camps. I did not know that the archipelago, the new archipelago, Gulag, was that large. On what do you base that number, 380?
The State Department conducted a full internal review of all the documentation we have. And Hugh, look, you're talking about 1 million civilians that are incarcerated, over 1 million civilians incarcerated right now. We have testimony to them being tortured. The women are having forced sterilizations, forced abortions. Children are being removed from Uyghur families. Uyghur women are being coerced into marriage with non-Uyghurs. And obviously, they're also not being allowed freedom of worship. So if you look at all of those facts together, this is a systematic attempt from the highest levels of the CCP leadership to, in essence, again, eliminate an entire people.
Undersecretary Krach, I want to relay to you a conversation I had yesterday with a senior East Asian diplomat who's on the front line. He expects General Secretary Xi to make a move against Taiwan by 2027, and he believes that that is widely shared opinion throughout East Asia. Do you agree with that? Because I think that, like the genocide, will be news to most Americans.
Well, I think that's an absolute possibility, Hugh, and I think that's a serious situation. That's why it's more important than ever to strengthen our relationship to Taiwan, to do whatever we can to get American investment in there, because that attracts our allies' investment. And just like the whole China issue, the biggest strategic asset we have is our network of trusted partners. And that's what we did with the Clean Network. We shut down their 5G program. We taught, we learned that China Inc. is beatable, and that's the way to do it, with democratic values, leveraging the innovation resources of the private sector, and uniting our allies. And I think that is the same thing with regard to genocide.
Has even one big name, and by big name, you know who I'm talking about, they run the biggest hedge funds, they are the biggest investors in the world, Has even one big name stepped forward to say we are out of China because China is intent on wiping out the Uyghurs? Has one person done that, Keith Krach?
We have not seen that, Hugh, and we're really waiting for that. I think the world is waiting for that, and they talk about all kinds of other, true north issues that are really important, but nobody's been speaking out against China.
And Ellie, do we ask? I mean, at shareholder meetings, is it appropriate for shareholders to stand up and ask, do we have a policy about the genocide in China? I think that would be very effective.
You know what? We have a good track record of that with Sudan in the past. So if we did it with Sudan, we can do it with China. There's no reason not to. Again, I think if every American does stand up and does hold their fund managers accountable, we can really have a huge impact on this conversation. And Hugh, I just want to say, when we say never again, we have to mean it. I mean, that's really my message to everybody today. When we say never again, we have to mean never again. And this is the moment for us to stand up for that.
It's also a moment for broadcasters to realize when they have on captains of industry on CNBC and elsewhere, they've got to ask those individuals, will you disinvest from China because of the genocide? Keith Krach, Ellie Cohanim, thank you so much. Great piece in Newsweek. I have tweeted it out. Please go and send it everywhere, America. The first step is to make sure Americans understand 380 camps with 1 million people, systematic destruction of an ethnic minority. That's called genocide. Chairman Xi is leading it. Thank you both. Let me now turn to our hourly reminder.